You know that feeling, right? That knot that forms in your stomach when you have to give someone tough feedback? Or maybe you're on the other side and you can feel that defensive wall just shoot straight up when you're the one getting it. These conversations, they're supposed to help us grow, but let's be honest, they usually feel more like a final verdict on everything we've done wrong. So today, let's talk about how to completely change that. So let's start with a classic, and I mean classic workplace dilemma. You've got Taylor Devani. On paper, an absolute superstar, an award-winning salesperson. But in reality, there are some major blind spots in how they treat people. And the new boss, Chris, is in a really tough spot because whatever they've tried in the past just hasn't worked. This one scenario, it really gets to the heart of a problem we all face and how we talk about performance. And that problem? Well, we can call it the feedback paradox. It's this weird situation where the very act of trying to help somebody improve by looking at their past mistakes actually causes the exact opposite reaction. It makes them more resistant and basically slams the door on any real possibility of change. And here's why that happens. You've got this fundamental disconnect. The person giving the feedback, our manager Chris, genuinely thinks they're offering a gift, a roadmap for getting better. But the person on the receiving end, Taylor, they hear something completely different. All they hear is, "You messed up. You're not good enough." And that's exactly where the paradox kicks in. So what's going on in our heads here? Well, psychologically, a few things are happening. First, there's just a deep-seated fear of failure, that nagging anxiety that we're not going to measure up. Second, we are all hardwired with something called a self-serving bias. It's super simple. When things go great, we think, yeah, I did that. But when things go badly, we start looking around for something or someone else to blame. And then you put that all into a conversation that's laser focused on the past, and it just feels like an interrogation. Of course we get defensive. All right, so how do we actually fix this? Well, the first part of the solution has nothing to do with the words you use in the conversation itself. It's about changing the entire context. It's about rewiring our own brains and the environments we're in to see failure not as some kind of dead end, but as a crucial part of the journey. And this all starts with Carol Dweck's amazing concept of mindset. Now, if you have a fixed mindset, you kind of see your talent like a statue. It's fixed, it is what it is. So for someone like Taylor, that award-winning sales record is their perfect statue, and any feedback just feels like a hammer trying to chip away at it. But with a growth mindset, your brain is like a muscle. And failure, it's not a verdict, it's just a workout. It's the starting point for getting stronger. And look, this isn't just some feel-good idea. Professionals at the absolute top of their game, especially in fields like science and tech, they live by this. They know that failure is essential. It's not some obstacle you have to get around. No, failure is the data. Every single quote-unquote failed experiment tells you something incredibly important about what you should do next. So how do you actually build this into the world around you? Well, researchers have found some really concrete ways to do it. They're using things like ungrading in classrooms, which totally shifts the focus from just chasing an A to actually reflecting on what you've learned. They're building supportive groups where it's okay to struggle. And in science, they're reframing null results, when an experiment doesn't produce a clear outcome, not as a mistake, but as a valid and important finding. This just perfectly illustrates the whole emotional journey. I love this student's car wash metaphor. The process of tackling a real challenge, it can feel exactly like that. Chaotic, disorienting, like you're trapped inside with soap and brushes flying everywhere. But if the environment is set up to support you, you come out the other side with a completely new and much clearer perspective. Okay, so we've reset the environment, we've started to work on our mindset. Now for the second part of the solution, changing the actual words we use. This is the tactical fix, the thing that can transform that feedback conversation right in the moment. And that's the big question, isn't it? If digging into why something went wrong just makes people like Taylor put their walls up, what's the alternative? What can a manager like Chris actually do differently in that meeting? And here it is. Here's the answer, straight from the research. And it's so simple, but it is incredibly powerful. The single biggest factor that determines if feedback works is whether the person receiving it feels like the conversation was about the future. It's not about diagnosing the past. It's about planning for what comes next. Yeah, think about it like this. It's the difference between a rearview mirror and a GPS. The rearview mirror, it only shows you what's behind you, the blame, the mistakes, who was responsible. A GPS, on the other hand, it accepts where you are right now and focuses 100% on plotting the best way forward. The questions completely shift from, why did this happen, to how can we do this differently next time?
And this is a huge point, so I want to make sure it lands. You can let go of the need to agree on what went wrong. Chris and Taylor do not have to see eye to eye on why those customers were unhappy. You get to completely skip the blame game and move directly to working together on a plan for the future. That is a total game changer.
Okay, now let's put these two big ideas together. Because when you combine a resilient, growth-oriented mindset with this future-focused way of communicating, that's when you create a really powerful system for real productive growth.
It really boils down to 3 simple steps. First, both personally and in your team's culture, you work on cultivating a growth mindset. Remember, failure is information, it's not a final grade. Second, you build an environment where it's genuinely safe to take risks and learn from them. And third, in those really important conversations, you use future-focused language to build solutions together, instead of just rehashing old problems.
This quote right here, it really gets to the heart of that second step. The goal isn't to prevent failure. The goal is to create opportunities to fail when the stakes are low. It's like a practice field, right? It's where you build the muscle of resilience and problem solving before you get to the big championship game. So, what can you start doing like today? Here's your toolkit. First, actively reframe failure in your own mind. It's not a verdict, it's a process. Second, really work on adopting that growth mindset. Your abilities can grow. Third, and this is a big one, the next time you give or get feedback, make a conscious effort to shift the language from why did to how can we. And finally, invest your time and energy in building those supportive networks for yourself and for the people around you.
And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Think about one setback you've had recently. Could be big, could be small. Now, instead of asking yourself why it happened, try asking a completely different question. Based on this experience, what is one thing I can do differently next time? That shift, right there, that is the future of failure.